Okay, here we go, starting up RStudio for the first time. So I'm assuming that you've installed both the latest versions of R and RStudio, which is what is known as an integrated development environment for the R software. You can run R directly without using the RStudio IDE, but for a variety of reasons, particularly on a PC, the RStudio IDE is just a vastly superior way to interact with R. And so I'm going to assume that you're using it because you'll make fewer mistakes if you do. So I've got a button here, or an icon here on my desktop. Just fire it up. Now, I'm pretty sure this is how it's going to look for you when you start up RStudio for the first time. It may have the theme a little bit wrong, but it's pretty close to this. So, black text on a white background. RStudio has the usual set of menu items across the top here. Unlike a lot of programs, we're not going to be interacting with many of these menu items very frequently. Over on the left-hand side of the screen, you have your what is called the console window that prints out some information about the version of R that you're using. This is basically where you're interacting directly with the R software engine. At this point in the console, you can type in what R calls expressions, and you will get back results from those expressions. We can assign things to variables and print out those variables, the results of those variables, all in the interactive console. So you can do anything right here at this command prompt to interact with our run commands and so forth. And that's the first way that you can interact with R. Now, let's look at a couple other panes here. These little things are called panes. Up in the top right, by default, you've got two panes. One is described as the environment. This tells you what sort of values and objects are stored in the global environment or the global workspace that you can work with, and it actually shows you typically a little bit of what the name of the object is and then a little bit of information about it. Often this panel can get very, very large, and I actually find it all that useful to work with in here, but it's there if you want to use it. The other tab that's up here in this pane is the history, and this is useful. This is just like the history in the bash shell. This is basically a recording of all the commands that we have issued at the command prompt here. And so what you can do is, let's say you were messing around with this for a while and you figured out what exactly the computation was that you wanted to do, then you could copy this command from the history to a new text file. What we're going to call in R is a script file. So I'm going to start up, I'll click the to source button, and that moves that command into this file here. So now you'll see my console window has shrunk, and now I have what is called an editor window up here above the console. This is just a text editor, just like any other. It's got a few buttons. So it doesn't have a name yet because I haven't saved it. There's a save button. There's a find and replace option. There's a few tools for working directly with code. And what does this button do? Oh, I think that's going to create a notebook. We don't want to do that yet. We'll just cancel that one for now. Yeah, compile notebook. That's a bit complicated. We'll get to things later. Now, once we're in a script like this, just having this on the command line here doesn't, we don't actually do anything when we type commands into our script file. Nothing happens when I do that. But if I select a line here and then click run, it takes this line and sends it to the console where R executes it and prints out the results. One more, so the history panel is quite useful. One more pane to go. This one's a bit more complicated. It defaults to having a Files tab open, and this is just showing you what files are present in a particular directory. When you start up, this is going to be the same as the working directory for wherever you have started RStudio from. So in this case, I've started it on my desktop and it defaults to the home directory. So I can do getwd, which is a function, and you can tell that because I've got the two parentheses after it. That tells R that I want to interact with the object called getwd, and I think it's a function. Functions are going to take arguments and they're going to return values. In this case, getwd tells us what is the working directory on the hard drive where R is going to start looking for files and other related things. In this case, it's C users drew documents is the default home directory on this computer. Getwd, if you want to map it back to what we were learning on the bash shell, is the same as the pwd command. Basically tells us where we are. And so in my working directory here in the documents file, I've got a whole bunch of files and a whole bunch of directories. It's a bit of a mess really on this computer, but that's fine. We won't worry about it too much. There's another tab here, plots. This is where the results of plotting things are going to appear. So we plot things in R in a variety of ways, but the easiest way to do it is to use the function plot. And I'm just going to make some random numbers and oops, that's not what I meant to do. What I did was there, I hit enter. What I meant to do was hit Control Enter. Control Enter is a shortcut for this run option here. If you just hover the mouse over, you'll see run the current line or selection. Control plus Enter is the same. Okay, so there's a plot, and by default, R has labeled the axes with the X and Y values that I've got. And there's a few things here that are kind of useful. A zoom button does what you think it is. It opens up a new window that makes the plot a bit bigger. You can export the plot as an image file or as a PDF or copy it to the clipboard. We have a listing of the packages, which for the moment, it's not going to make any sense to you. I've got a lot of packages installed on my computer. You won't start with this many at the beginning, but you work with R for a while and you'll accumulate a larger number of packages to help you do what you do. Here's the help pane, and the viewer pane is just a little web browser in case some of the functions that RStudio has allow you to display things in web browsers. We'll talk more about the help in a little bit. So I've already really talked about the main way that you can interact with R by typing commands out on the console here, and then when you're happy with them, you can copy them up into the console or into the editor. So let's say I wanted to change this so that the X label is a random number and the Y label is a different random number. Okay, just hit enter. That runs that function. Now you can see my X and Y labels have changed. And I like that one better, so I'm going to highlight it here in the console prompt or in the history, send it over to the source, and delete this version. So I like that one better. Okay, a few things you can see in the script editor here. Numbers are colored blue. Text strings are colored green. And comments are actually colored green too. So the hash mark at the beginning tells R that this is a comment, and it should just ignore this particular line. Let's see, what else do I want to tell you about? Okay, so we've saved this file here now. So we could say testing 2, 3, 4, just to make sure it gets saved as something different. .r. I'll give it a capital R. That's apparently the way in which people want to work with it. The preferred extension for an R file. That R file is just a text file. So I can prove that to you by opening a bash window and changing to the documents folder. And I'm going to go cat testing 1234.r, and there's my text file. Okay, so the contents of that .r file are nothing special. It's just a text file that contains a sequence of commands for just telling R what to do. All right. So I've shown you working with R by doing things in the interactive console and then copying things to the script window, the editor. But in general, that's going to be kind of that works all right for short little things. But pretty quickly, you're going to find that what you're really an easier way to work with R is just to start by typing your commands directly into the script file here. So now I want to fit a linear model. So I'm first going to make some data, and oops, that's not what I meant to do. Why did that not work? Alt. Oh, I see. Nope. I thought that was. Oh, there we go. Okay. What I'm going to do is assign some data to an object. Okay, so that's the primary way in which we store things. So I need to use what's called the assignment operator. In R, the assignment operator that's preferred is this one. It's a greater than sign followed by a minus sign. And then you type rnorm 100. So this is a function because it's got the parentheses after it. And the first argument is 100. That tells it how many random numbers I want. And the name of that argument is n. So I'm just basically going to say n equals 100 and assign the result of that to the object called x. So now I'm going to hit Control Enter. And sometimes it's useful to take a look and see what that looks like. There, yep, okay, x has got 100 random numbers in it. Good. Y. And now I'm going to tell this what I was fidgeting around for before was the shortcut for this assignment operator in RStudio. If you hold down the Alt key and the minus sign, you get that assignment operator in a single keystroke. It's a little easier than fumbling around for the less than sign and the shift less than and then the minus sign. Bit easier. In the bad old days when R was created, that operator was actually a single keystroke on the standard terminal that was being used, which is why they didn't think it was a bad idea to have two characters. So now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to say 0.1 times, plus, here we go, 1 times x plus rnorm n equals 100. And you can see in the little tooltip there, when I started typing that function, it actually gave me some help. What are the arguments that this function can take? And in this case, I want the mean to be 0, but I'm also going to change the standard deviation a little bit so that it's 0.1. Okay. Now I'm going to plot x and y. That's what that looks like. And now I'm going to fit a linear model. My first model, LM. Don't worry about this syntax right at the moment. We'll come back to describe this all later. This is really just demonstrating sort of what you can do with some of these visualization tools and model fitting tools. So there, I generated some random data, and I fitted a linear model to that data. And now if I wanted to get the summary of that model, I would just say my first model, and it would print it out in the console window, the results. And you can see that it's estimated the intercept at 0.1 and the slope at pretty much 0.1 as well, which is reassuring given that that's what we assumed was true up here. R squared of 0.99. So it's a pretty good model, pretty good fit. Not surprising given the data. So this is really the best, for more sophisticated work, this is really how you're going to interact with RStudio by typing your commands into the script window here, and then running them by using Control-Enter, or, for example, you can actually highlight a whole block of commands and send them to the console all at once, again with Control-Enter. So all of those sorts of ways of working are good, and the advantage is that right from the beginning you have a documentation of what it is that you've done with R for that particular exercise. So your script is always there. It always has the results that you want to use. So there you go. That's a first introduction to RStudio and a little bit about how I think you might want to try and interact with R. And that's probably enough for this video.